Hey guys, tonight we leave behind the roaring image of Viking warriors charging across icy seas and instead wander into a much quieter place. Imagine the first pale light of dawn spreading across a lonely Scandinavian valley where the grass sparkles with frost, the air smells of damp earth and wood smoke, and somewhere in the distance a cow is already demanding breakfast with complete confidence. Tonight, you're not swinging a legendary axe or searching for hidden treasure. You're about to discover what it was really like to be a Viking farmer. And, fair warning, you probably won't survive this, at least not without complaining about your sore back before breakfast. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're settling in, let me know your location and your local time in the comments. It's always fascinating to see where everyone is joining tonight's sleepy little history journey from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The morning begins long before the sun has fully decided to rise. There are no alarms buzzing beside your bed. There is no comforting promise that you can sleep another 10 minutes. Instead, the cold itself wakes you. It creeps beneath your wool blanket, slips through tiny gaps in the wooden walls, and gently reminds you that the animals are already awake whether you feel like moving or not. You open your eyes inside the family's longhouse. At first, everything appears almost completely dark. The fire that burned through the night has settled into glowing orange embers. Wisps of smoke drift lazily upward toward the roof vents, carrying the familiar scent of birch and pine. Around you, everyone else is slowly stirring. Children rub their eyes. Someone coughs. A dog stretches with an impressive yawn that somehow sounds louder than necessary. The house itself feels alive. This isn't simply where your family sleeps. It is where nearly every important part of life happens. Meals are prepared here. Tools are repaired here. Stories are shared here. Wool is spun here. During winter, some of the smaller animals may even spend part of their time under the same roof, adding their own unmistakable perfume to the atmosphere. Modern homes separate everything into tidy rooms. A Viking longhouse is much more practical. Space is precious. Warmth is precious. Privacy is, well, mostly a future invention. You pull on thick wool clothing that never really feels completely dry. The fabric has seen better years, but replacing clothes takes time and skill. Every thread represents hours of spinning, weaving, and sewing. Nothing is thrown away unless it has absolutely reached the end of its usefulness. Stepping outside feels like entering another world. The cold air bites instantly at your face. Tiny clouds of breath drift away into the still morning. The sky glows deep blue before sunrise, while distant mountains stand silently against the horizon like ancient guardians watching another ordinary day begin. This landscape is beautiful. It is also completely indifferent to whether you succeed or fail. Unlike the dramatic stories that celebrate Viking raids across Europe, your life rarely travels very far beyond these familiar hills. Adventure sounds exciting in poems. Farming, however, prefers routine. Routine keeps people alive. Every morning follows nearly the same rhythm, because nature appreciates consistency far more than creativity. Your boots crunch softly across frozen ground as you walk toward the livestock enclosure. The animals recognize the sound immediately. A sheep lets out an impatient bleat. The goats seem convinced breakfast is already late. The cow stares at you with remarkable seriousness, as if personally judging your speed. You might imagine that owning animals feels like possessing wealth, and in many ways it does. Livestock provide milk, meat, hides, wool, labor, and status within the community. But wealth also comes with responsibility. Every animal depends entirely upon you. If they are healthy, your family has a better chance of surviving winter. If disease spreads through the herd, months or even years of hard work can disappear frighteningly fast. You begin feeding them carefully, checking each one almost without thinking. Small injuries matter. Strange behavior matters. A limping goat today could become a serious problem tomorrow. No veterinarian is arriving from the nearest town. You are the nearest town. The peaceful sounds of chewing slowly replace the impatient cries. Only then do you finally allow yourself a slow breath. The eastern horizon brightens. Sunlight slips gently across the fields. During summer, these fields will become your entire world. Every patch of soil has already been cleared by generations before you. Stones removed one by one, tree roots dug out with exhausting effort. Every useful acre exists because countless hands refuse to give up. Looking across the land, It almost seems effortless now. Grass sways quietly. Morning mist drifts across low ground. Birds begin singing somewhere near the edge of the forest. Nature has an impressive ability to hide how much labor created this peaceful view. You kneel and scoop a handful of earth into your palm. The soil feels cool and slightly damp. Its condition determines almost everything. Will grain grow well this year? Has winter damaged the ground? Will spring arrive early enough? No one can answer yet. You simply work, prepare, and hope. Hope is an important crop on every Viking farm. The rest of the household gradually spreads across the property, each person already understanding today's responsibilities without needing lengthy discussion. Older children gather kindling. Someone fetches water from a nearby stream. Another family member begins grinding grain using heavy stone querns, whose steady rhythm has echoed through Scandinavian homes for centuries. Nothing feels hurried. Yet no one wastes time. The day ahead is already full. Repairing fences, cleaning tools, preparing fields, checking stored food, collecting firewood, watching the sky, always watching the sky. Clouds are more than scenery. They are messages. Wind direction carries meaning. The behavior of birds sometimes suggests changing weather. Living this close to nature means becoming fluent in details many modern people barely notice. A warm breeze can bring relief. A late frost can destroy weeks of careful effort. As the sun finally clears the distant hills, golden light spills across your farm. It transforms rough wooden buildings into something almost magical for a few quiet moments. Dew sparkles like tiny jewels scattered over the grass. It is peaceful enough that someone visiting centuries later might believe this life is simple. But simplicity should never be mistaken for ease. Every comfortable evening depends upon an exhausting morning. Every successful harvest depends upon thousands of ordinary decisions made correctly. There are no shortcuts waiting to be discovered. Only steady hands, patient work, and another sunrise that asks exactly the same question it asked yesterday. Are you ready to begin again? Because on a Viking farm, the answer has to be yes. Every single day. The first chores of the morning slowly settle into a comfortable rhythm, and as the animals grow quieter and the pale sunlight stretches across the valley, your attention returns to the place that stands at the center of your entire world. Your home. From a distance, it does not look especially impressive. There are no towering stone walls, no glittering windows, and certainly no colorful gardens arranged for decoration. Instead, the longhouse rests low against the landscape, almost as if it has decided that arguing with the wind would be a losing battle. Its thick timber walls and turf-covered roof help it blend naturally into the hillside. Beauty here is measured differently. If a house keeps the family warm through winter, it is beautiful. If it keeps the roof from collapsing beneath heavy snow, it is beautiful. If it survives another generation, then it is something worth quietly admiring. You walk toward the doorway, ducking slightly beneath the heavy wooden beam that supports the entrance. The familiar scent greets you immediately. Wood smoke, warm wool, fresh bread, animal hides, a hint of damp earth carried in on everyone's boots. To someone arriving from the modern world, the mixture might seem unusual. Yet after spending even a few days here, these smells become reassuring. They mean the fire is alive. They mean food is nearby. They mean your family has shelter. The longhouse is more than a building. It is the heart of survival. Unlike modern homes divided into bedrooms, kitchens, offices, and living rooms, this single structure must serve almost every purpose imaginable. People sleep here. Meals are prepared here. Tools are repaired here. Clothing is woven here. Children learn here. Elders tell stories here. Guests are welcomed here. Even important family decisions happen around the central fire. The fire itself is never taken for granted. It burns in a long hearth that runs through the middle of the house, sending warmth outward, while smoke slowly escapes through openings high above. It is not a perfect system. Some smoke always lingers beneath the roof, gently darkening the wooden beams year after year. Those blackened beams quietly record the passing of time. Every season leaves another faint layer behind. As you glance upward, sunlight slips through the smoke in soft golden rays, creating an almost dreamlike scene. It is strangely peaceful. The crackling fire provides a steady soundtrack while someone carefully stirs a pot hanging above the flames. Breakfast is modest. Perhaps barley porridge, a little sour milk, maybe yesterday's bread. If fortune has been kind, there may be butter or a small piece of smoked fish. Nobody complains that the menu rarely changes. Eating is about nourishment first. Variety comes only when nature allows it. You settle onto a simple wooden bench worn smooth by decades of use. Every scratch tells a story. Every polished corner reflects thousands of ordinary moments shared by generations who lived remarkably similar lives. Nothing inside the house is wasted. Wooden bowls are repaired again and again. Iron knives are sharpened countless times. Broken tools become smaller tools. Old clothing becomes patches. Worn blankets become stuffing. In a place where resources demand enormous effort to produce, throwing something away would seem almost unbelievable. Even ashes from the fire find new purposes. Outside, nearly everything depends upon strength. Inside, nearly everything depends upon careful management. One family member spins wool into thread with practiced hands. Another mends clothing so skillfully that the repair almost disappears. A child twists rope from plant fibers while listening to an elder explain why patience matters more than speed. No classroom exists. Learning happens by watching, by copying, by making mistakes, by trying again tomorrow. The youngest children play nearby, using carved wooden toys that resemble tiny animals or simple boats. Their laughter briefly fills the room before an older sibling gently reminds them not to chase each other too close to the fire. Even play quietly prepares them for adulthood. Tiny wooden animals become lessons about livestock. Toy boats become dreams of distant voyages. Simple games teach balance, cooperation, and observation. Without anyone realizing it, childhood slowly becomes education. The walls around you are decorated sparingly. Perhaps a carved wooden chest, a carefully polished drinking horn, a family heirloom passed down through several generations. Every treasured object carries emotional value because replacing it would not be easy. Some possessions represent months of work, others represent memories. Both are equally precious. As the morning continues, sunlight slowly shifts across the packed earth floor. You notice how every member of the household naturally moves around one another without getting in each other's way. Nobody announces their next task. Everyone simply knows. One person carries water. Another stacks firewood. Someone else prepares grain for grinding. The rhythm feels almost musical, not because life is easy, because repetition has become second nature. Outside, the weather quietly reminds everyone who truly controls the day. A stronger wind begins pushing against the walls. The turf roof barely notices. Its thick layers of earth help trap warmth inside while adding enough weight to resist powerful gusts sweeping across the countryside. Rain will come eventually. It always does. When it does, the roof must hold. A leaking roof means damp bedding. Damp bedding means cold nights. Cold nights invite sickness. Small problems rarely stay small for long. Maintenance, therefore, never ends. A loose board is repaired immediately. A cracked support beam receives attention before it grows worse. Even replacing a handful of damaged thatch becomes worthwhile. Preventing disaster always requires less effort than surviving it. As midday approaches, smoke continues curling upward while conversations drift gently through the room. News spreads slowly in Viking communities. Travelers may arrive with stories from distant settlements. Neighbors may stop by to borrow tools or exchange advice about weather. Someone might mention a successful hunt. Another shares concern about wolves wandering closer to livestock. Information moves person to person. Every visitor brings a little piece of the wider world. Yet despite occasional news of kings, traders, or distant conflicts, your daily attention rarely wanders far beyond the farm. The fence still needs repairing. The grain still needs planting. The animals still need feeding. History often celebrates dramatic battles. Your life celebrates a roof that does not leak during autumn storms. There is something quietly admirable about that. This house does not promise luxury. It promises endurance. It shelters babies taking their first steps. It comforts exhausted parents after endless days in the fields. It protects grandparents who have already survived countless winters. Within these walls, generations overlap like rings inside an ancient tree. Each season leaves another memory. Each repaired beam tells another story. Each smoky evening beside the fire reminds you that comfort is not always about having more. Sometimes, comfort simply means knowing that everyone you love is safely inside, while the cold wind howls outside. The longhouse stands quietly against that wind, asking for little more than steady care and patient hands. And tomorrow morning, when the frost once again settles over the valley, its familiar doorway will welcome you back to begin another ordinary day. One more sunrise, one more fire, one more reminder that a Viking farmer's greatest fortress was never a castle. It was home. The warmth of the longhouse fades behind you as the door closes with a soft wooden thud. Outside, the fresh morning air carries the earthy scent of damp soil, and almost without thinking, your feet begin following the same familiar path they have walked hundreds of times before, toward the fields. Unlike the dramatic stories of Viking ships disappearing over the horizon, your greatest adventures rarely take place beyond the edge of your own farmland. These fields decide whether your family eats well, merely survives, or faces the frightening possibility of hunger when winter returns. You pause for a moment and look across the land. At first glance, it seems peaceful. Small patches of barley ripple gently in the breeze. A few rows of oats stretch toward the distant hillside. Vegetable gardens sit quietly beside the house. Wildflowers bloom along rough stone fences. Everything appears calm. Yet beneath that peaceful appearance lies an endless amount of work. Nothing grows by accident. Every handful of grain has demanded countless hours of labor long before a single green shoot appeared. Long before sunrise weeks ago, you cleared stones from the soil one by one. Some were no larger than your fist. Others required two people working together just to drag them toward the edge of the field. The land constantly produces more stones than anyone remembers placing there. Sometimes it almost feels as though the earth enjoys playing little jokes on farmers. You could swear you removed that exact rock yesterday. Today, somehow, another one is waiting. The ground itself seems determined to test your patience. Unlike the rich farmland found farther south in Europe, much of Scandinavia offers only thin layers of soil resting upon stubborn rock. Good farmland is precious, and families protect every usable patch with extraordinary care. There is no room for waste. Every square meter matters. You kneel beside a young barley plant. Its narrow green leaves sway gently in the breeze. It looks delicate, but it carries enormous responsibility. Barley is one of the crops that keeps Viking families alive. It becomes bread, porridge, and sometimes ale. Harvest enough of it, and winter feels manageable. Harvest too little. Winter suddenly feels much longer. As you continue walking, your boots leave faint impressions in the soft earth. The soil feels cool beneath your hands. Too dry, and the crops struggle. Too wet, and roots begin to rot. Too cold, and seeds simply refuse to grow. The farmer spends nearly every day paying attention to details that many people never notice. Clouds, wind, moisture, temperature, even the color of the leaves. Nature rarely speaks loudly. Instead, it whispers. The successful farmer learns to listen. Nearby, another member of the household works steadily with a simple wooden hoe. There are no loud engines, no tractors, no machines capable of finishing an entire field before lunch. Every movement comes from human muscles. Every furrow represents physical effort. Hour after hour, day after day. You quickly discover that farming rewards consistency far more than speed. Trying to rush usually creates more problems than it solves. Seeds planted carelessly rarely produce healthy harvests. Rows left untended soon fill with weeds eager to steal precious nutrients. Even pulling weeds becomes an important task. Tiny, unwanted plants compete fiercely for sunlight and water. Ignoring them today means losing grain tomorrow. So you bend down again, and again, and again. The work becomes strangely rhythmic. Reach, pull, shake away the soil, move forward, repeat. Before long, your thoughts begin wandering peacefully with the movement of your hands. Birdsong fills the air. Bees drift between wildflowers. A cool breeze carries the distant sound of sheep grazing somewhere beyond the hill. There is no audience applauding your effort, no celebration for removing another handful of weeds. Most of farming consists of ordinary moments that nobody remembers individually. Only the harvest remembers. Around midday, the sun climbs higher overhead. The cool morning slowly gives way to gentle warmth. Sweat forms beneath your wool clothing despite the pleasant weather. Wool may keep you warm during winter, but on sunny days it reminds you that comfort is always relative. You pause briefly to drink cool water carried from the nearby stream. The break lasts only a few minutes. There is still too much to do. Farming teaches an unusual relationship with time. Modern life often measures success by minutes. Here, success is measured by seasons. You plant in spring. You tend throughout summer. You harvest in autumn. You survive through winter. Then everything begins again. Patience is not optional. It is survival itself. As afternoon approaches, dark clouds begin gathering far beyond the western hills. You notice them immediately. Every farmer does. Storms can arrive with surprising speed. A gentle rain may help the crops. A violent storm can flatten entire fields within hours. You cannot stop the weather. You can only prepare for it. This acceptance becomes part of everyday life. Some years bring generous harvests. Others bring disappointment. Despite equal effort, nature follows no promises. Only patterns. The fields themselves also demand constant repair. Small drainage ditches must remain clear so water flows away instead of flooding valuable crops. Stone boundaries shift after heavy frost. Wooden fences weaken over time. Everything requires attention. Nothing maintains itself. Nearby, children carry small baskets while collecting loose stones from newly turned soil. Their work may seem minor. In reality, every stone removed today makes tomorrow's plowing slightly easier. Even young hands contribute to the family's future. No task is considered too small. As the afternoon sunlight softens, you stand at the highest edge of the field and look back across everything your family has built. The longhouse, the gardens, the pasture, the grain, the winding footpaths connecting each part together. It is not a kingdom. It is not famous. No traveling poet will compose songs about this quiet hillside. Yet this modest farm represents something remarkably powerful. It transforms hard work into life. Without fields like these scattered across Scandinavia, there would be no villages. Without villages, no thriving trade. Without food, no sailors crossing northern seas. Even the legendary Viking expeditions that history remembers depended upon ordinary farmers producing enough grain to feed entire communities. In many ways, these peaceful fields quietly supported every famous voyage. The heroes celebrated in sagas could only leave because someone stayed behind to grow food. That someone is you. As evening slowly approaches, golden sunlight washes across the barley, making each stalk shimmer like tiny strands of polished bronze. The breeze returns, softer now. The day's work is far from finished. Tomorrow's work has already begun, because fields never truly rest. They simply wait for the next pair of patient hands willing to care for them. And as you turn back toward the longhouse once more, you realize something quietly remarkable. A Viking farmer never really conquered the land. Instead, day after day, season after season, they earned its trust. The fields have been tended for the day, at least for now, but your work is nowhere near finished. In fact, many Viking farmers would quietly tell you that the crops are only half the story. The other half has 4 legs, sometimes 2 horns, occasionally a remarkably stubborn personality. As you leave the barley fields behind, a familiar chorus greets you before you even reach the pasture. A cow calls out with impressive confidence. Several sheep answer almost immediately. Goats seem to believe every visitor has arrived carrying food. A pig snorts somewhere nearby, sounding completely unconcerned with anyone else's schedule. The farm feels alive. Not because of people alone, because every animal has its own routine, its own needs, and its own small role in helping the family survive another year. To someone from the modern world, these animals might seem like simple farm companions. To you, they are something much greater. They are walking savings accounts. They are winter insurance. They are food, clothing, transportation, fertilizer, and sometimes even friendship wrapped into one noisy collection of creatures. You begin with the cattle. Cows are among the most valuable animals on the entire farm. Not because they provide endless meat. In fact, slaughtering a healthy cow too early would often be considered wasteful. Milk is far more valuable over time. Each morning and evening, the cows are carefully milked. That fresh milk becomes butter, cheese, curds, sour milk that lasts longer than fresh milk ever could. During the long Scandinavian winters, preserved dairy products become precious sources of nutrition. Every drop matters. You settle beside one patient brown cow, whose calm expression suggests she has watched generations of farmers perform exactly the same task. The warm bucket slowly fills. The rhythmic sound is almost hypnotic. Milk splashes gently against wood. The cow chews peacefully. The morning breeze drifts across the pasture. For a few quiet moments, life feels wonderfully simple. Of course, simplicity has a habit of disappearing rather quickly. Just as you finish, a curious calf decides your sleeve looks fascinating and begins enthusiastically licking it. Its rough tongue feels surprisingly determined. You gently push it away. It immediately tries again. Apparently, this is today's entertainment. Nearby, the sheep have already started gathering around the gate. Sheep are quieter than cows, but no less important. Their thick wool protects them through bitter winters. Eventually, that same wool will become warm clothing, blankets, cloaks, socks, and countless other necessities. Unlike cotton, wool remains warm even when slightly damp, making it ideal for the unpredictable Nordic climate. Each spring, sheep are carefully shorn. Removing the heavy fleece takes patience. The wool must then be cleaned, sorted, spun into thread, and woven into cloth. One sheep may provide enough wool for many useful items, but only after many hours of skilled work. Nothing arrives quickly. Every finished garment represents teamwork stretching across months. A few goats wander confidently toward a nearby rocky slope. Goats possess remarkable confidence. If there is a place that appears difficult to climb, they immediately decide it is the perfect destination. They browse bushes that cattle ignore and happily eat plants that seem far less appealing. Their milk also helps feed the household. Their ability to survive rough terrain makes them especially valuable in mountainous regions. Watching them scramble across steep rocks almost makes you question whether gravity has somehow become optional. The pigs require different attention. Unlike the graceful sheep or dependable cattle, pigs possess impressive determination whenever food is involved. They root through fallen leaves, searching for acorns, roots, insects, and almost anything remotely edible. In autumn, forests become enormous dining halls for pigs. Allowing them to forage naturally saves valuable stored feed. A particularly enthusiastic pig discovers a muddy puddle and immediately throws itself into it with complete satisfaction. Modern people sometimes assume pigs enjoy being dirty. In reality, the mud helps cool them and protects their skin from insects. Still, they certainly seem to appreciate the experience. Not every chore feels equally glamorous. Cleaning animal shelters quickly reminds you that Viking farming rarely appears in paintings for this particular reason. Fresh straw must be spread. Old bedding removed. Waste collected. It is tiring work. It is also incredibly important. Animal manure becomes fertilizer for the fields. What leaves the barn eventually returns to the soil. The farm operates almost like one enormous living cycle, where very little is truly wasted. Even the chickens contribute. They scratch constantly through loose soil, searching for insects. They produce eggs whenever conditions allow. Their feathers may even find new uses around the household. Small animals, big importance. Then there are the horses. Unlike the mighty war horses celebrated in heroic sagas, your farm horse is practical rather than dramatic. It helps pull loads, carries supplies, travels between neighboring farms. Sometimes it simply saves enormous amounts of human effort. You brush its thick coat while checking carefully for cuts or swelling. A healthy horse means easier work tomorrow. An injured horse means the family suddenly has far fewer options. Every animal demands observation. You learn to recognize subtle changes. A sheep eating less than usual, a cow walking differently, a horse appearing unusually tired. Tiny signs often appear long before serious illness. Experience teaches you to notice them. Nature rewards careful eyes. The day continues with repairing fences surrounding the pasture. Wood weakens over time. Heavy snow, rain, and curious livestock constantly test every barrier. One loose section quickly becomes an open invitation. And animals possess an almost magical ability to discover exactly where the fence is weakest. You hammer another wooden stake firmly into the ground. The fence stands straight once more, at least until tomorrow decides otherwise. As afternoon slowly fades toward evening, the entire pasture changes. The harsh brightness of midday softens into warm golden light. Long shadows stretch across the grass. Birds sing from nearby birch trees. The animals become calmer. Cows settle quietly. Sheep gather together. Goats finally abandon their mountain-climbing ambitions for the day. There is something deeply peaceful about this moment. No battles, no kings, no legendary voyages, only ordinary people caring for ordinary animals. Yet these ordinary moments quietly supported the extraordinary world remembered by history. Without healthy livestock, there would be little food for growing families. Without wool, winter clothing would become scarce. Without horses, travel and heavy work would slow dramatically. Without manure, the fields would produce smaller harvests. Everything connects. Every creature matters. As the cool evening breeze returns, you lead the last of the animals safely toward their shelters. One final head count. One final check of the gates. One final glance across the pasture. The day is ending. The animals are safe. Tomorrow morning, before the sun rises once again, they will already be waiting. And just like today, they will expect breakfast before you've even had yours. The animals are finally settled for the evening. The pasture grows quiet, and for a brief moment, it almost feels as though the hardest part of the day is behind you. Then you look up. The sky. Every Viking farmer eventually learns the same lesson. You do not control the weather. You negotiate with it. Sometimes it listens. Most of the time, it simply does whatever it wants. As you stand outside the longhouse, the cool evening breeze brushes gently across your face. Thin clouds drift over the western hills, painted orange and gold by the setting sun. It is beautiful enough to make you forget that tomorrow this same sky could deliver freezing rain, violent wind, or even an unexpected frost. Nature has a remarkable sense of timing. Unfortunately, it rarely matches yours. Unlike people living in warmer parts of Europe, farmers across Scandinavia work within a surprisingly short growing season. Winter often refuses to leave quickly, and autumn has an annoying habit of arriving earlier than anyone hopes. Every spring feels like a race. Every autumn feels like a deadline. Miss either one, and the consequences may last for months. You step into the fields once more, not because another chore demands immediate attention, but because experienced farmers constantly observe their land. The breeze feels slightly cooler today. The clouds seem thicker. Birds are flying lower than yesterday. Tiny details matter. A modern weather forecast might tell you that rain is expected tomorrow afternoon. Your forecast depends on years of careful observation. You notice how the swallows swoop unusually close to the ground. You watch the direction of the wind moving through the barley. You study the distant mountain peaks where dark clouds quietly gather. Nature offers clues, never guarantees. Only clues. The first drops of rain arrive just before sunset. Soft, gentle, almost comforting. You smile. This kind of rain is welcome. The thirsty fields absorb the moisture eagerly. Fresh droplets cling to every blade of barley until the entire field sparkles beneath the fading light. It is exactly the sort of rainfall every farmer hopes for. But hope can disappear overnight. A storm that begins gently may become something entirely different by morning. Hours later, while everyone sleeps inside the longhouse, heavy winds begin pushing against the turf-covered roof. Rain strikes the wooden walls. Branches sway outside. Somewhere beyond the pasture, thunder rolls across the valley. You wake instantly, not because thunder frightens you, because storms mean work. You step outside into the darkness, wrapping a heavy wool cloak tightly around yourself. The cold rain stings your face. Lightning briefly illuminates the farm. For one brilliant second, every fence, every roof, every tree stands sharply outlined against the night sky. Then darkness returns. The animals seem restless. The horse shifts nervously. The sheep gather tightly together. Even the cattle appear unusually quiet. Animals often sense changing weather before humans fully understand it. You make a quick round of the buildings. The roof remains secure. The barn doors are closed. The fences still stand. Satisfied, you return indoors, though sleep now comes much more slowly. By dawn, the storm has passed. The valley feels freshly washed. Tiny streams flow beside the fields. Drops of water hang from every branch. The air smells wonderfully clean, yet storms always leave questions behind. Has the barley survived? Did flooding damage the lowest fields? Did strong winds flatten young crops? You walk the land carefully. Fortunately, this time, the damage is minor. A few broken branches, one loose fence post, some shallow puddles. You quietly thank whatever good fortune watches over hard-working farmers, because next time may not be so kind. Not every weather challenge arrives with thunder. Sometimes, the greatest danger appears silently. Late spring frost. Imagine waking one beautiful morning after several warm weeks. The trees have begun growing fresh leaves. Young shoots have pushed confidently through the soil. Everything promises a wonderful harvest. Then overnight, the temperature falls. Ice forms across the fields. By sunrise, delicate plants sparkle beneath a thin layer of frost. Beautiful. Devastating. What looked like diamonds only moments ago now represents weeks of lost work. There is almost nothing you can do. You simply stand there, breathing cold air, hoping the damage is less severe than it appears. Sometimes the crops recover. Sometimes they never do. Summer brings different worries. Long daylight hours allow crops to grow quickly. But unusually dry weather creates another problem. The ground begins cracking. Streams shrink. Grass loses its rich green color. Livestock search farther for fresh grazing. Every cloud crossing the sky suddenly becomes exciting. Will it rain? Or simply drift away again? You spend more time looking upward than forward. Autumn, meanwhile, creates an entirely different kind of pressure. Harvest must happen before repeated rains soak the grain. Wet grain molds quickly. Spoiled grain cannot feed a family. Every clear day becomes precious. Every unexpected shower steals valuable time. Entire households work together from sunrise until dusk, gathering crops before weather changes once again. Even winter refuses to remain predictable. Some winters arrive gently. Others seem determined to remind everyone exactly who holds the true power. Snow piles against the longhouse walls. Frozen rivers delay travel. Strong winds create enormous drifts around buildings. Livestock require extra feed because fresh grazing disappears beneath thick snow. Firewood vanishes faster than expected. Each morning begins with clearing paths simply to reach the animals. The cold becomes more than uncomfortable. It becomes exhausting. And still, the chores continue. No season grants vacation, perhaps another challenge entirely. You take one final look across the landscape before returning home. The mountains remain silent. The fields remain patient. The sky offers no promises, only possibilities. And tomorrow morning, just as every morning before it, you will wake before sunrise. Step outside, look upward, and begin another quiet conversation with the weather. The storm has passed, the sky has cleared, and the fields glisten beneath the fresh morning light. After checking the crops and making sure the animals are safe, your stomach quietly reminds you that even the hardest working Viking farmer cannot live on determination alone. Eventually, you have to eat. Modern grocery stores promise hundreds of choices. Your Viking farm promises something much simpler. Whatever the land, the animals, and the seasons have been generous enough to provide. Breakfast begins with a familiar sight. A heavy iron pot hangs above the fire. Inside, barley porridge slowly bubbles, filling the longhouse with a comforting aroma that everyone recognizes immediately. It is not fancy. It is not exciting. But it is dependable. And dependable food keeps people alive. Barley is the quiet hero of your table. Ground into flour, it becomes coarse bread. Boiled with water, it becomes thick porridge. Sometimes it is brewed into ale, a drink often safer than untreated water, and enjoyed by adults and children alike in weaker forms. Every grain harvested months ago now returns to repay your hard work. Nothing feels wasted. You scoop the steaming porridge into a smooth wooden bowl. The bowl itself has served your family for years. Tiny scratches cover its surface. Each one tells the story of another meal shared beside the fire. You take your first spoonful. Warm, nutty, simple, not especially memorable. Yet after hours of working in the cold morning air, it tastes surprisingly satisfying. Beside the porridge sits a small piece of dark bread. Unlike the soft white loaves many people enjoy today, Viking bread is dense and hearty. Every bite requires a little more effort. Every loaf represents weeks of farming, grinding grain by hand, mixing dough, and baking over hot stones or inside simple ovens. Bread is never taken for granted. Butter adds a welcome richness. Made from carefully churned milk, it is one of the farm's most valuable foods. Sometimes it is spread generously. Sometimes only a thin layer can be spared. Everything depends upon how well the cows have produced milk that season. Nearby, someone slices a piece of smoked fish. Scandinavia is surrounded by rivers, lakes, and seas filled with valuable food. Cod, herring, salmon, trout. Fresh fish tastes wonderful, but preserving it matters even more. Fish are salted, smoked, dried, prepared carefully so they remain edible throughout the long winter months. Without preservation, much of the catch would quickly spoil. Preserving food becomes almost as important as finding it. The same is true for meat. Most families cannot afford to slaughter healthy livestock whenever they feel hungry. Animals provide far greater value while alive: milk, wool, labor, future offspring. When an animal is finally butchered, every usable part is carefully saved. The meat is smoked over slow fires, salted whenever precious salt is available, hung to dry beneath cool northern air. Nothing is thrown away unnecessarily. Bones become tools or broth. Hides become leather. Fat becomes cooking fuel or candles. Resourcefulness is not a special skill. It is simply everyday life. As the seasons change, so does the menu. Spring offers fresh herbs and tender greens that appear after months of eating preserved foods. Summer brings berries growing wild across forests and hillsides. Blueberries, lingonberries, cloudberries, and northern wetlands. Children often know the best gathering places long before adults arrive. The forests quietly provide sweet rewards for patient eyes. Autumn becomes a season of abundance. Root vegetables fill storage pits. Cabbages are harvested. Turnips become an important source of winter nutrition. Apples grow in some regions. Hazelnuts are carefully collected. Mushrooms appear beneath forest trees. The only experienced gatherers dare trust every variety. One mistake can become deadly. Knowledge passes from one generation to the next, not through books, through careful observation and memory. Honey is perhaps the closest thing to luxury. Wild honey is difficult to collect and highly prized. Its sweetness transforms ordinary meals into special occasions. A small spoonful can brighten an entire day's work. The bees, however, politely remind everyone that good things usually come with a few painful stings. During winter, meals become much simpler. Fresh vegetables disappear. Berries become preserved. Stored grain becomes increasingly precious. Smoked meat hangs from the rafters. Cheese hardens with age. Butter is carefully rationed. Every family quietly calculates whether the stored food will last until spring. No one says it aloud. Everyone thinks about it. Children help prepare meals whenever possible. One grinds grain using heavy stone querns. Another gathers firewood. Someone fetches fresh water from nearby streams or wells. Even setting the table becomes part of learning. No chore seems too small. Every task contributes to survival. As evening arrives, the entire family gathers once again around the central hearth. The fire crackles softly. Shadows dance across timber walls darkened by years of smoke. Outside, cold winds sweep across the valley. Inside, warm bowls pass from hand to hand. Conversation drifts slowly through the room. Someone mentions tomorrow's weather. Someone else remembers a story told by a grandparent. A child proudly announces spotting a fox near the sheep pasture. Nobody rushes. Meals are one of the few times when nearly everyone pauses together. There is comfort in that rhythm. You notice something interesting. The richest meal is not necessarily the happiest one. Even a simple bowl of barley porridge shared among family after a long day's work can feel deeply satisfying. Hunger sharpens appreciation. Hard work gives food meaning. Modern life often celebrates endless variety. A Viking farmer celebrates enough. Enough bread. Enough butter. Enough grain. Enough firewood. Enough food stored safely before winter arrives. That single word, enough, carries extraordinary power. As the fire slowly burns lower, the last pieces of bread disappear from the table. Wooden bowls are cleaned carefully. Nothing edible remains behind. Tomorrow's breakfast already depends upon today's careful choices. You stretch tired muscles, while the warmth of the hearth slowly chases away the evening chill. Outside, darkness quietly settles across the farm. The animals sleep. The fields rest beneath the stars. Inside the longhouse, full stomachs and weary bodies prepare for another early morning. Because when the sun rises again, the land will once more ask for your labor. And once again, the first reward waiting at day's end will not be gold or glory, but another humble meal honestly earned. Morning arrives quietly once again. The fire is stirred back to life. The animals begin calling from their shelters. Mist settles gently over the fields. You step outside expecting another ordinary day of work, but before long, you notice something unusual. A figure is walking along the narrow path that winds between the hills. It is your neighbor. He is carrying an axe over one shoulder, not in the dramatic way of a Viking warrior from the stories, but in the practical way of someone who expects to spend the day cutting timber. He raises a hand in greeting. No long speeches, no grand announcements, just a simple wave that quietly says we have work to do. Life on a Viking farm teaches an important lesson very quickly. No family survives completely alone. The image of the independent Viking is popular today. The reality is much different. Neighbors matter. Perhaps more than almost anything else. Your farm may belong to your family, but many of the biggest jobs simply cannot be completed by one household. Building a new barn, raising heavy roof beams, harvesting grain before a storm, dragging large stones from a field, launching a fishing boat. These are community tasks. Everyone helps because everyone understands that one day they will need the same help in return. You walk together toward the forest. The conversation is relaxed. There is no rush. The path feels familiar beneath your boots, lined with pine, birch, and scattered patches of wildflowers. Birds sing high above. The morning air carries the rich scent of damp moss and fresh wood. The forest is generous. It provides timber for houses, branches for firewood, berries during summer, game for skilled hunters. But collecting its gifts requires effort. The tree selected today is tall and straight, perfect for replacing an aging support beam inside a nearby longhouse. Several neighbors have already arrived. Without discussion, everyone naturally finds a task. One sharpens an axe. Another clears brush around the base of the tree. Someone measures the direction where it should safely fall. Experience has taught everyone the importance of planning. Trees are surprisingly heavy. They have very little interest in falling where you would prefer. The wood has darkened where countless fingers have gripped it. Tiny scratches cover its surface. Every mark represents another season in the fields. It may look ordinary, yet this humble tool helps prepare the very ground that feeds your family. Without it, planting grain becomes far more difficult. Beside it rests a sturdy iron axe. Unlike the polished ceremonial weapons that appear in heroic legends, this axe is practical above everything else. It fells trees, splits firewood, shapes timber, repairs fences, builds houses. Yes, it could defend your family if absolutely necessary. But 99 days out of 100, it serves the peaceful purpose of creating rather than destroying. History often remembers Viking axes because of battles. Farmers remember them because they kept roofs standing. Nearby lies a wooden rake. Simple, light, surprisingly useful. It gathers hay, levels loose soil, collects fallen branches. Sometimes the simplest inventions survive the longest because they solve ordinary problems so well. You kneel beside a whetstone, resting near the doorway. The axe blade has become slightly dull after yesterday's work. A dull blade is dangerous. It demands more force. More force means less control. So before another tree is ever cut, the edge must be sharpened. You splash a little water across the stone, then slowly begin moving the blade. Back and forth, again, again, again. The scraping sound becomes almost meditative. There is no rush. Sharpening rewards patience. Soon the edge catches the morning light with a clean silver shine. Ready for another day's work. Iron itself is precious. Unlike wood, it cannot simply be gathered from the forest. Producing iron requires mining ore, building charcoal fires, and skilled blacksmiths who understand exactly how heat transforms metal. Every iron tool therefore represents enormous effort long before it ever reaches your farm. When something requires that much work to create, you naturally treat it with respect. Nothing is carelessly abandoned. A broken wooden handle is replaced. A cracked blade is repaired whenever possible. Even badly worn tools may be reshaped into smaller ones. Waste belongs to people with endless resources. You do not have that luxury. The blacksmith occupies a special place within Viking society. His workshop glows with heat while sparks dance into the air. Inside, iron bars slowly soften until they glow orange. Heavy hammers strike glowing metal against sturdy anvils. Each powerful blow changes the shape little by little. There is nothing magical about it, yet watching cold stone become useful metal almost feels magical anyway. You occasionally visit the blacksmith to repair damaged tools or order replacements. These visits are rare. Iron costs too much to replace unnecessarily. Today, however, your work remains at home. A wooden plow stands beside the barn. Compared to modern tractors, it seems unbelievably simple. Its frame consists mostly of sturdy timber strengthened with carefully fitted iron parts. Pulled by a horse or ox, it scratches narrow furrows into the soil where seeds will later grow. It demands patience. The ground often fights back. Roots catch the blade. Hidden stones stop progress completely. Sometimes the plow seems determined to remind you that farming has never been an easy conversation with the earth. You guide the horse slowly forward. The wooden frame creaks gently. Fresh soil rolls aside. Dark earth appears beneath lighter surface layers. The smell rises immediately, rich, moist, alive. Every straight furrow promises possibility, not certainty. Only possibility. Nearby, a woven basket waits to carry seeds. Its construction seems almost effortless until you remember the hours required to weave each flexible branch together. Even containers demand craftsmanship. Nothing around you exists by accident. The rope securing the horse, the leather harness, the wooden bucket, the iron nails holding a door together. Someone spent precious hours creating every single object. That realization quietly changes how you see the world. You begin noticing skill everywhere. Even a simple wooden spoon represents careful carving. A sturdy barrel requires remarkable precision. A weatherproof roof depends upon countless well-shaped boards. The farm becomes a collection of invisible craftsmanship hidden inside ordinary things. As afternoon sunlight warms the fields, another tool comes into your hands. A sickle, its gently curved iron blade, glints softly. During harvest season, this modest tool becomes one of the busiest objects on the farm. Hour after hour, it slices cleanly through ripe grain. Each careful movement gathers another handful of food for winter. Its design has changed very little across centuries because it works remarkably well. Good ideas often survive longer than kingdoms. Children begin learning about tools almost as soon as they are strong enough to carry them safely. First a small wooden rake, later a light axe. Eventually heavier responsibilities. Nobody expects perfection. Only care. Respect for tools also means respect for the work they make possible. As the day slowly fades, you wipe dirt from the hoe. Dry the axe. Store the sickle beneath shelter. Place everything back in its familiar place. This final task may seem unimportant. It is not. Rain damages wood. Moisture encourages rust. Leaving tools scattered carelessly guarantees extra work tomorrow. A few thoughtful minutes this evening may save hours next month. The sun slips lower toward the west.